You know that feeling when you check your bank account and instead of immediately closing the app in horror, you actually smile? Like when you stop calculating whether you can afford that coffee or if buying groceries means eating ramen for the rest of the week. There's a specific number where this shift happens, and it's not what most people think. Most financial gurus will tell you that you need $1 million to feel wealthy, or that six figures is the magic number. But here's the thing they're missing. There's a much smaller milestone that completely transforms your relationship with money, and once you hit it, everything changes. That number is $20,000. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for decades. If you're someone who wants to understand the real mechanics behind wealth building, instead of just hoping things will magically improve, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up helping you see money differently. Now, before we dive into why $20,000 is the real game changer, let me ask you something. When you think about building wealth, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture some trust fund kid who never had to worry about money. Or perhaps you imagine someone grinding away for years, slowly accumulating wealth $1 at a time. The truth is, wealth building doesn't work the way most people think it does. Here's what actually happens. There are certain financial thresholds that act like invisible barriers. Once you cross them, the rules of the game completely change. $20,000 is the first major threshold that separates those who will build significant wealth from those who will spend their entire lives living paycheck to paycheck. And the crazy part is, most people have no idea this threshold even exists. Think about it this way. If you've ever tried to push a heavy boulder up a hill, you know that getting it started is the hardest part. You're straining, sweating, making very little progress, and questioning whether it's even possible. But once you build enough momentum, something magical happens. The boulder starts moving faster, and eventually, when you reach the top, it rolls down the other side almost effortlessly. $20,000 is that turning point where your financial boulder finally crests the hill. Everything before this point feels like you're pushing uphill against gravity. Everything after this point feels like gravity is working in your favor. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is something that will probably surprise you. The difference isn't just mathematical. It's not simply that you have more money to invest or that your returns are larger in absolute terms. The real magic happens in your brain. When you don't have money saved, your brain operates in what psychologists call survival mode. Every financial decision is filtered through fear and scarcity. You take the first job offer that comes along, even if it's terrible, because you can't afford to be picky. You stay in situations you hate because leaving feels too risky. You say yes to things you don't want to do because you need the money. This isn't just about being practical or responsible. When you're in survival mode, your brain literally can't think about growth and opportunity. It's like trying to plan a vacation while your house is on fire. Your mental bandwidth is completely consumed by immediate threats and short-term survival. But something remarkable happens when you cross that $20,000 threshold. Suddenly, your brain has the space to think differently. Instead of asking, how do I survive until next paycheck? You start asking, how can I grow this money? Instead of being reactive to whatever financial crisis pops up, you become proactive about building wealth. Research from Vanguard shows that having just $2,000 in emergency savings increases your financial well-being by 21%. $2,000. That's less than most people spend on a vacation or a fancy laptop. But that small buffer creates a massive psychological shift because it moves you out of pure survival mode. When you push that emergency fund to 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which for most people lands somewhere around $20,000, you get another 13% boost in financial well-being. But more importantly, you've now created enough breathing room for your brain to start thinking about wealth building instead of just wealth preservation. Here's where the math starts getting really exciting. Let's say you're saving $1,000 every month and earning an 8% return on your investments. Getting to your first $20,000 takes about 19 months of consistent saving and investing. That's a year and a half of discipline, sacrifice, and delayed gratification. It's not easy, and frankly, most people give up somewhere along the way. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Your second $20,000 doesn't take another 19 months. It only takes about 17 months. Why? Because now you've got that first $20,000 working alongside your monthly contributions, generating its own returns. Think about this for a second. You did the exact same amount of work, saved the same amount of money each month, took the same level of risk with your investments, but you shaved 2 full months off the timeline just because you had more money working for you. That's the power of compound interest starting to kick in. By the time you're going for your third $20,000, the timeline shrinks even more. Your money is doing an increasing share of the heavy lifting while you're putting in the same effort. And when you get to the really big numbers, the acceleration becomes almost comical. Once you hit $400,000 in your investment portfolio, you can generate your next $20,000 in just 5 months. The same amount that took you nearly 2 years to save initially is now happening automatically through your investments. That first milestone feels impossible, but every milestone after that gets progressively easier. Now, you might be thinking that wealthy people have access to some secret investment world that regular folks can't touch. Like there are exclusive hedge funds or special opportunities that only unlock once you reach certain wealth levels. And while there is some truth to that at the ultra high end, it's not what's driving this $20,000 phenomenon. The real secret is much simpler and honestly much more encouraging. It's just basic mathematics working in your favor. When you invest $1,000 and it grows 10% in a year, you make $100. Take that exact same 10% growth rate and apply it to $10,000, and suddenly you're looking at $1,000 in profit from the same investment, same time frame, same level of risk. This is why hitting $20,000 feels like such a turning point. Up until that point, your investment returns feel almost insignificant because you're working with smaller amounts. A 10% return on $2,000 is $200. Nice, but not exactly life-changing. But a 10% return on $20,000 is $2,000. Now, we're talking about money that actually matters. When you've got $20,000 sitting in investments earning 8% annually, that's $1,600 flowing into your account over the course of a year without you having to lift a finger. Money you didn't have to earn through your job. Money that showed up because your existing money was working on your behalf. The investment strategy isn't any more sophisticated than what someone with $1,000 can use. You can buy the exact same index funds, use the same brokerages, follow the same basic principles. The only difference is scale, and that scale transforms small percentage wins into real financial progress. But here's the part that most people completely miss, and it might be the most important point in this entire video. When you save $20,000, you've actually accomplished something far more valuable than just accumulating money in a bank account. You've fundamentally rewired your brain and built the most important financial habit you'll ever develop. And this might sound like some self-help nonsense, but stick with me because this is where things get really practical. Think about what it actually takes to save $20,000 if you're starting from zero. Unless you're making ridiculous money or living in your parents' basement rent-free, this requires serious discipline. You had to track where every dollar was going. You had to say no to things you wanted so you could set money aside instead. You had to resist the urge to blow your savings on whatever shiny object caught your attention that week. Most importantly, you had to do all of this consistently for months or even years. And here's the kicker. You proved to yourself that you can control your money instead of letting it control you. You became the type of person who can delay gratification when it really matters. That's not just a financial skill, that's a life skill. This identity shift is huge because it affects every financial decision you make going forward. Before you had $20,000 saved, buying a $4 coffee might have required mental gymnastics about whether you could afford it. After you hit $20,000, you're not sweating the small stuff anymore because you know you have your priorities straight. You've proven you can make the big sacrifices when necessary. But there's another psychological shift that happens at this level that most people don't talk about. you start seeing opportunities instead of just threats. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every unexpected expense feels like a disaster. Your car needs repairs, your laptop dies, your rent goes up. These aren't opportunities, they're financial emergencies that derail your entire month. But when you have $20,000 in the bank, these same events become minor inconveniences at worst. Your car needs repairs, annoying but not catastrophic. Your laptop dies, time to upgrade to something better. Your rent goes up, maybe it's time to finally look for a better place or negotiate your salary. Even better, you start noticing opportunities that were always there, but you couldn't take advantage of before. Your friend mentions they're starting a business and looking for investors. Before, you would have thought, that sounds interesting, and moved on. Now you can actually consider whether it's worth throwing $5,000 at it. A killer deal pops up on a rental property that needs some work. Before, you would have scrolled past it on Zillow and maybe felt a little envious. Now you can run the numbers and see if it makes sense as an investment. Your boss mentions there's a conference in another city that could be great for your career, but the company won't pay for it. Before, you would have made excuses about why you can't afford to go. Now you can weigh the potential return on investment. This is what wealthy people mean when they say, money goes to money. It's not some cosmic conspiracy where the universe rewards people who already have cash. It's that having money gives you options, and options create more opportunities to make money. Here's something else that happens around the $20,000 mark that will make you question everything you thought you knew about budgeting. You start caring less about small expenses and more about big ones. I know that sounds backwards, but hear me out. When you're broke, you obsess over every purchase. Should I buy the name brand cereal or the generic version? Is it worth spending $3 on coffee when I could make it at home? Should I get the premium gas or the regular? These decisions consume mental energy because every dollar feels precious. But when you have a solid financial foundation, you realize these micro decisions are largely irrelevant. The difference between spending $3 on coffee versus making it at home is maybe $1,000 per year if you're really going overboard. That's not nothing, but it's not going to make or break your financial future either. What matters are the big decisions: where you live, what you drive, how much you save, where you invest. These choices can swing your net worth by tens of thousands of dollars over time. So instead of agonizing over whether to buy the organic bananas, you focus your energy on optimizing your housing costs, maximizing your income, and making sure your investment strategy is solid. This shift in focus is incredibly liberating because it frees up mental bandwidth for the decisions that actually matter. You stop sweating the small stuff and start thinking strategically about wealth building. Now, let's talk about what happens to your career once you hit this milestone, because this is where things get really interesting. Having $20,000 saved doesn't just change your relationship with money, it changes your relationship with work. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're essentially trapped in whatever job you currently have. Your boss could be terrible, your coworkers could be toxic, the work could be mind-numbing, but you can't leave because you need that next paycheck to survive. This puts you in an incredibly weak negotiating position. You can't ask for a raise because you're afraid they might fire you. You can't push back on unreasonable demands because you need the job more than they need you. You can't explore other opportunities because taking time off for interviews feels too risky. You're stuck, and everyone knows it. But $20,000 changes the entire dynamic. Suddenly, you have what I call walking away money. You could quit tomorrow and survive for months while you find something better. This doesn't mean you should be reckless or burn bridges unnecessarily, but it means you're negotiating from a position of strength instead of desperation. This psychological shift affects everything about how you approach your career. You start asking for the raise you deserve because the worst they can say is no, and you'll be fine either way. You push back on unreasonable requests because you're not afraid of the consequences. You explore new opportunities because you can afford to take some risks. Here's what's really crazy. Often, you don't even need to use your walking away money. Just having it changes your entire demeanor at work. you become more confident, more assertive, more willing to take on challenging projects. And guess what happens when you show up differently? People notice. Suddenly you're getting better assignments, more recognition, and yes, more money. It's like having a secret superpower that you hope you never have to use, but knowing it's there changes everything about how you operate. And the best part is the more confident and successful you become at work, the faster you build wealth, which gives you even more options and confidence. It's a positive feedback loop that accelerates over time. But here's where most people mess this up, and I see it constantly. They hit $20,000, feel that psychological shift, and then immediately blow it on something stupid. Maybe they decide they deserve a new car since they've been so disciplined, or they take an expensive vacation because they've earned it, or they use it as a down payment on a house they can't really afford. Don't do this. That $20,000 is not a reward for good behavior. It's the foundation of your entire financial future. It's the seed that grows into generational wealth if you're patient enough to let it compound. Instead, and that will probably make you laugh or cry depending on your current situation, the average person spends more money on their car over their lifetime than it would take to achieve complete financial independence. Think about that for a second. Between car payments, insurance, maintenance, and gas, most people are dropping $600 to $800 every single month on transportation. Over a 40-year period, that's easily $400,000 or more just to get from point A to point B. Meanwhile, they're complaining that they can't afford to save for retirement. It's like watching someone spend a fortune on a gym membership they never use while complaining they can't afford to eat healthy food. Here's the thing that makes this even more ridiculous. The moment you drive a new car off the lot, it loses about 20% of its value. So you're not just spending money, you're actively destroying wealth. Compare that to investing the same amount in a diversified portfolio. Instead of watching your money evaporate, you're watching it multiply. But I get it. Like, cars are emotional purchases. You want something reliable, something that looks good, something that makes you feel successful. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you understand what you're trading off. That car payment might make you feel wealthy, but it's actually keeping you poor. This is where having $20,000 saved completely changes your perspective on major purchases. Instead of thinking, can I afford the monthly payment? You start thinking, what is this really costing me in terms of opportunity? That $30,000 car isn't just $30,000. It's $30,000 that could have grown to over $200,000 in your investment account over 20 years. Suddenly, driving a reliable used car doesn't feel like a sacrifice anymore. It feels like a strategic choice that's funding your future freedom. And here's the beautiful irony. The person driving the flashy new car is probably stressed about money, while the person driving the older Honda is quietly building wealth and sleeping better at night. This mindset shift extends to every major financial decision you make. Housing, education, vacations, hobbies. Everything gets filtered through the lens of opportunity cost, not in an obsessive way that sucks all the joy out of life, but in a strategic way that ensures you're making intentional choices about where your money goes. And let me tell you something that might surprise you. Once you start thinking this way, you often realize you don't actually want half the stuff you thought you wanted. That bigger apartment, the extra space would be nice, but is it worth delaying your financial independence by 5 years, that expensive hobby? It's fun, but there are probably cheaper ways to get the same satisfaction. This isn't about becoming a penny-pinching miser who never enjoys anything. It's about becoming intentional with your money instead of letting it slip away on things that don't actually matter to you. Hydris, when you have clear financial goals and understand the power of compound interest, it becomes much easier to distinguish between what you want and what you really want. Look, $20,000 isn't going to make you rich overnight, but it will fundamentally change how you think about money and opportunity. It's the difference between surviving and thriving, between reacting to life and designing it. Start building that foundation today because your future self is counting on the decision you make right now. Trust me, they'll thank you for it.